What's up, everyone? The stock market was all over the place last week. There were a bunch of great moves and a bunch of great opportunities. And luckily, we are going to see more volatility heading into this week as we do have some important things to talk about with big earnings coming up, another interest rate hike with Powell speaking. So in this video, we're going to cover a $4.6 million options trade for tomorrow that you definitely want to keep on your watch list, and some solid setups throughout tomorrow and the rest of the week, and important things to know. Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, Mike, a lot of stocks were going crazy last week. I know we looked at Amazon with their earnings last week and Apple ended up exploding up on Friday. I know we talked about this a ton on Thursday night's video, but Apple was up 7.56%, Mike. Now, Amazon was down 6.8% in total, but they were down 20% at the low. But it was very nice to see them recover back up, and we saw the SPY really break out above that high of week last week, right around 387.50. So we saw a very nice breakout on SPY, Mike. I'm liking the way a lot of these stocks are setting up here heading into this week. But look at this great uptrend going on. This uptrend could definitely reverse as we have the FOMC interest rate decision coming out at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. This is going to be extremely important. They are pricing in a 75 basis point move right now, and then Powell will be speaking at his press conference at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time right after the decision. But Mike, as we know, this is going to bring in a ton of volatility, and it could really make the SPY reverse.
So we'll see, it's a huge event. Lots of volatility will come into the market for sure. And when you look at the SPY right now, there is a ton of bullish momentum, and that's awesome. Talking more about the FOMC, just like you said, Tom, it always brings in volatility. Most of the time, FOMC results in an upside move, but recently that has definitely not been the case. There's been a lot of selling pressure associated with whenever Powell speaks nowadays, but historically, most of the time it's green. So another important thing to keep in mind with just the events this week will also just be like earnings, yes, we might see some selling pressure come in from the FOMC or some other news article, but I really think earnings are going to play a giant role into how the market moves this week. I mean, look at what Apple and Netflix and Amazon did to the market this past week.
Yeah, exactly. That was huge, Mike. Good thing we don't have any huge stocks like that reporting, but we do still have a lot of huge players here. Like, look at Tuesday. We're going to see Pfizer, British Petroleum, AMD, Airbnb. I've actually seen some people talking about Energy Transfer lately, given their high dividend, but be careful with that one, guys. I like AMD, though. Wednesday, we have Roku, Qualcomm, CVS, even Robinhood. Then Thursday, PayPal, Coinbase, Square, or Block. And then we have good old DraftKings Friday, Mike. Can't forget about them. And I even see Starbucks in the mix here.
Yeah, DraftKings is definitely going to be my favorite stock for the week in terms of earnings releases. We have already completed like the biggest earnings week of the year, and that would be last week as we had Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Meta report. But we still do have a lot of big movers set to report this week. DraftKings reports on Friday before market open. That'll be big. And then if we go back to the earnings list really quickly, like Tom just said, we even have some big players like AMD, PayPal, Coinbase, and more set to report.
Yeah, and I think Coinbase might actually be very interesting, Mike. I know a lot of people have been talking about cryptos a lot lately, and I actually saw that Dogecoin was actually popping up on the crazy news of Elon actually taking over Twitter. So maybe that'll end up helping out Coinbase a little bit. Let's see how they did on Friday. They're kind of bouncing on support around 69.50. But Mike, I know that news with Elon's been crazy lately, not to take away from earnings, but that could end up throwing a wrench into some of these earnings too.
Yeah, and another thing with earnings plays, I really think the best way to go with earnings going forward is just playing the move after. Like, let's look at Apple, Tom, in after hours on, it would be Thursday in after hours. So at first, Apple reported, and it moved up a little bit, and then it moved down a little bit, and then it moved up and down. And then by the time the market opened, it was basically flat, and then it started to run up. There were a couple earnings releases like Meta that just like had a huge move literally right from open, but there's still a ton of opportunity playing these earnings stocks after the move already happens. Check out Netflix stock from last week, right? Or I guess 2 weeks ago, but they reported earnings and then, yes, they moved up a little bit on earnings, but they continued going up. So I think it's a lot less risky to play these stocks after earnings, and arguably the trend can be more consistent, you know? So consider doing that instead of playing these stocks before earnings and then suffering through all the crazy volatility and IV crush.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do play it before earnings, you can always play a pre-earnings move, but just sell it obviously before you get hit with that IV crush heading into the big event. And you can always get back in the next day too. So I know a lot of people, Mike, hold a lot of options for the longer term too. And, Mike's not saying if you hold an option that expires in a year to get out right away. He means more of in the shorter term, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't, like, you have to be so careful playing short-term options on earnings. Sometimes you see some absolutely insane moves and gains, but for the most part, it's a losing strategy. So that's why I'm saying, take out some of that risk and just play the stock after the earnings releases, and then you could just scalp it from there. In my opinion, there's no point in holding through the release unless you're gambling,
Yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of people love to gamble on earnings, Mike. I almost feel like it's one of people's favorite events.
Oh, easily. No doubt about that. Tom, a couple minutes ago, you mentioned Twitter, right? Elon now owns Twitter. Twitter stock is done, guys. There's no more trading Twitter. It's taken private. It's over. It's over. So just so you guys know, and just so everyone's clear on that.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be huge, guys. And I cannot believe that he took this over. I am very curious to see what he's going to do, Mike. A lot of people are saying, well, it looks like he's going to have a content moderation council, and they're talking about potentially bringing back Donald Trump's account, which would be interesting. Now, I know Trump did say that he would not return to the platform, but if Musk is running it and it's honestly popular, I would think he would definitely come back, especially given Mike, DWAC and Truth Social has not been going too well, to say the least. But what a crazy news article, Mike. I just can't believe that Elon's finally got control of Twitter. It was so funny last week to see him walk into the Twitter headquarters with a sink. That was hilarious. He walked straight in with a sink and he said, "Let that sink in, guys." It was hilarious, but we're going to have to see what happens, Mike. It looks like people are already, like GM here is already suspending their advertising with Twitter, given his takeover. And, I honestly don't blame GM for this, Mike. Honestly, that's kind of like Tesla's competitor. So it makes sense for them to suspend their advertising.
Tesla's competitor. I didn't even think about that at first. Like when I saw this news at GM, I thought it was like entirely political, but now that you mentioned like GM directly competes with Elon with Tesla, I guess it does kind of make sense.
Yeah, it really does. They've been coming out with these electric Hummers, and they're going to have the electric Silverado and the electric Chevy Trailblazer and all that stuff. So yeah, they're definitely direct competitors. And that is pretty funny though, to see them pause that advertising, Mike. That is pretty funny given all their beef going on.
Yep. All right. So getting into some good plays for this week. The first one I want to talk about is WEAT. Wheat. Very boring, but it's interesting right now. So let's check out this news article from this weekend. We can see the EU urges Russia to revoke Ukraine Black Sea grain deal suspension. Long story short, Russia and Ukraine had a deal where they allowed Ukraine to export some of their grains to the rest of the world. Russia has now suspended that deal, and less grain will be exported. That's a bad thing. So grain is obviously something that is necessary to just feed the world. The demand is not something that fluctuates too much. So when you see the supply go down in a decent way, you would think that grain prices would go up. WEAT is a wheat/grain ETF, you can say. I have been watching it over the past couple weeks, and it has pulled back a little bit, but this news article/catalyst can definitely change that. I'm definitely watching WEAT to the upside this week. I would expect it to get some like bullish momentum from this news article. It's definitely going to be on my watch list. What I do like about it is that it's not really correlated to the market too much. It just kind of moves by itself, which is a good thing, especially in this environment.
Yeah, that is actually a really good thing, Mike. And as far as technicals go, it looks like it is kind of forming a very nice support here around $8.50 in the shorter term. You can really see that support better when I go to that hourly chart. So if we start holding 850 and bouncing up this week, guys, definitely watch WEAT. I know, Mike, we've seen a lot of stocks have a lot of volatility because of some of these things that have been going on in Ukraine over the past couple of years. And talking about wheat, look at it at the beginning of this year, Mike. This thing straight up exploded from $7.30 all the way up to highs of $12. I'm not saying we're going to get back up to $12 again, but this is an $8.50 stock, Mike. Honestly, a nice move up to like 10 or 10.50 would be a nice 20% pop. So let's see some good movement and maybe it can start to move up. But, Mike, I know you talked a little bit earlier about not playing stocks into earnings, and I'm not recommending to play AMD heading into earnings, but I will be watching it a lot this week and potentially tomorrow for a quick breakout trade. But keep in mind, they do have earnings Tuesday night, so I would not hold it after Monday, guys. But looking at it for tomorrow, Mike, it's in a pretty good setup. It's at the high of last week. If we could break out up above that high around 62.75, I will definitely be watching AMD for a breakout. It's been extremely low. It showed a lot of bullish momentum Friday, and a lot of good tech stocks started ripping back. So I'm going to keep it on the radar. And if it moves well with earnings, I'll also be watching it post earnings for a possible post earnings move like we talked about. Netflix has done well post earnings, so is Enphase and a few others.
There we go. All right, another one I'm watching is Intel. So kind of similar industry to AMD. Intel reported earnings last week, and they are booming to the upside. Intel had an amazing day on Friday. Intel stock has just been beaten down like horribly over the past year. Just in 2022, they have highs of $56, lows of like $24.60, and right now it's back at 29. Intel is a stock that typically trends over the course of multiple days or multiple weeks. You don't always see gigantic moves out of this one. I mean, I know you did on Friday, but for the most part, you don't really see moves like 10% up or down. It's more of a slower moving stock. And I'm looking at Intel to the upside going into probably like the next week to a week and a half. It looks like it has some of that bullish momentum back. It is pretty dang oversold. And it, honestly, it's just due for a pop back up. It's been a brutal year for the company, and they got earnings out of the way, so it's definitely on my radar to the upside.
Yeah, it looks really good back to the upside, Mike. Like you said, extremely low this year, and even over the past few years, it's been honestly really falling off. So I'm really watching it, Mike. As far as technicals go, really good consolidation down here, really close to $26 on the stock last week. Then we got that big pop up with earnings, and for all of my technical traders out there, looks like a pretty good inverse head and shoulders pattern. So watch this, guys. I really love head and shoulders patterns when they print on the daily charts. And I really love how a lot of buyers came in at that lower support on earnings. So gonna really keep this one on the radar, Mike. Looks pretty solid. And I know I talked about AMD, and I'm gonna talk about another play that has earnings this week, which is DraftKings, but their earnings are all the way on Friday. So we might be able to see a pretty good move back to the upside with them this week if we see a breakout. So I'm going to watch this one for a move up above $15.30. That is a huge level up there. You can see we double topped last week at that level, and we bounced off of it in the past. So if we pass 15.30, Mike, I will watch it for a breakout. That it's really been consolidating there for the past 3 days or so. And, I love momentum plays. And if this breaks, I think it could definitely have a big move. And, we keep talking about stocks that are low this year, and DraftKings is definitely one of them.
You know it, without a doubt. Guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We post brand new videos every single day. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos more often. Definitely subscribe and join the channel. Tom, it is now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we actually have Intel to the upside.
INTC, very nice move last week. Go ahead and make them break above that big resistance there right around 29.22.
All right, with the next one, we have XBI, also to the upside.
XBI, this one's interesting, a biotech ETF. They actually have a nice resistance last week right around 84.25, so make them break above that.
All right, and with the last one, we have C, also to the upside.
Citigroup. It was nice to see these banks recovering. Go ahead and make them break out above 46.30.
All right, so we're watching C, XBI, and Intel for potential day trades to the upside tomorrow, only if they break above the levels Tom listed. But it is now time for the $4.6 million options trade for tomorrow. We are looking at Meta. It's been a really tough year for Meta, and we are looking at the 115 strike call options for June 16th of 2023. On Friday, someone dumped around $4.6 million into this option trade. Right now, Meta is trading for just under $100 a share. And again, we're talking about the 115 strike calls for June 16th of 2023. For those of you who don't trade options, basically what this means is they are betting on Meta to be higher than $115 on June 16th of 2023. Meta stock is extremely low right now. It's very oversold. It's a company I like for the long term. Looking at the stock, I would not be surprised at all if it is above 115 by June 16th of 2023. Looks like a pretty solid setup to me.
Yeah, it does look solid to me as well, Mike. One question I have though is could the institutions be shorting those calls? Because I will say with Meta dropping, I get that it's for June 16th, but that is a pretty big drop, and that's quite a bit of money into those calls, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, shorting those calls are definitely a possibility. Maybe it could be a covered call. And that's one thing that we'll ultimately never know. Given how much time and given how oversold Meta stock is, I would think that they're longing the calls, but you definitely bring up a good point.
Yeah, that is actually a lot of time. That is a good point too, Mike, because if it was a shorter time frame, like obviously within like the next month or two, that would obviously look like some covered calls or something there. But with the time, it does kind of make you think like maybe they are longing that. So good play, Mike. I mean, Meta's extremely low. It's all the way down around $100. And, they always say to buy at peak points of fear. And at some point, Meta's going to start coming back up. And the main question is when is the low going to be? And hopefully it's here right around 100, Mike, because that's a big psychological level.
You know it. All right, Tom. Well, I am super excited for this week. I have some of my favorite stocks set to report earnings, like DraftKings. We have a big event with the interest rate hike and slash FOMC meeting on Wednesday. I think it's going to be a great week. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Watch out for the volatility, guys. I will say, though, I am pretty excited for this week, Mike. I mean, the SPY had a great day Friday. We started really breaking out. Now, I know these big events can obviously turn the market around, but for right now, at least sentiments are trending back in the right direction. So I'll take the good movement, Mike, and I'll continue to watch for amazing breakout plays. Like we talked about in this video, we talked about wheat, which can be amazing. I'm looking at DraftKings for a nice break of that double top last week. And like we said, Mike, that wheat stock is very interesting. And we've seen that thing really explode in the past with this Ukraine news. So definitely watch this one. If you guys are day traders, I mean, you better keep wheat on the radar.
There we go. Also, before we close out, I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, and that is Manoj in the Stocked Up Discord. You've been in the chat for over 2 years now, and you're just a good member of the community. So Tom and I appreciate you. Thanks for being a great member of the Stocked Up community. Guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We post brand new videos every single day, and when you subscribe, you'll see them more often. I'm pumped for this week. There's going to be a ton of great moves, a lot of craziness with earnings and the FOMC. I'm pumped. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's have an amazing week.